I met Judy Schwartz back in 2012, I think, Judy, at an event at Deepak Chopra's ABC Carpet series in New York City. And Alan was speaking there. And maybe there was some transformation for Judy, I hope. But from then on, we started this journey, parallel, intersecting here and there. And she produced some of the most beautiful stories of the regenerative and holistic network and has articulated, and as she puts it, illuminated scientific concepts and nature-based solutions with such grace and love. I love Judy. She's the author of many books that are just amazing. So if you haven't read them, please do so. Cow Save the Planet, Water in Plain Sight, her latest, The Reindeer Chronicles, oh my goodness. And she has been recently a contributor to an all-women written compilation of essays, All We Can Save, just hot off the press, beautiful too. You must read that. I am delighted and honored to have her today with us to inspire us. The title of her presentation, I believe, is All We Can Regenerate. With that, Judy, the floor is yours. Enjoy.
Thank you, Daniela. I love you too. And hello to Selene. We are certainly thinking of you. So, all we can regenerate. Last year, two young women scientists were together at a conference, you know, when we used to go places. And they were musing over the fact that when it came to climate, it was always the same 4 or 5 white guys who were interviewed. Now, these two women are Catherine Wilkinson, the lead writer for the book Drawdown, and Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, a marine biologist. Wait a minute, they said. There are plenty of brilliant women climate experts out there. Let's make sure we're part of the conversation. After all, how can we hope to address such a vast challenge while leaving half of humanity without a voice? Thus was born the book, All We Can Save, Truth, Courage, and Solutions for the Climate Crisis, which features the essays, poems, and artwork of women, more than 60 women, including me. My contribution is an essay about bringing the water cycle into the climate conversation, something that ultimately is about how we act upon the land, the topic of our gathering today. This book was just released last week and has been getting a huge amount of press, including in some improbable venues like People magazine and The Hollywood Reporter. That's because celebrities like Jane Fonda and America Ferrara narrate the audiobook. The other day I found out that Julia Louis-Dreyfus narrated my essay, and I think that's pretty darn cool. Now, she and I are about the same age and the same height, so I guess we're kind of like the same person. Anyway, the story that I want to share with you all is this. When the book was finished, proofed, and sent out for review, we met on Zoom for a virtual toast. It was a beautiful June night here in Vermont, and I was out on my deck with my glass of wine, with the fireflies out and the hermit thrush singing. We went around our group, I think there were about 22 of us there, saying what this book meant to each of us. And I swear to you, something happened. People were talking about hope, nurturing, collaboration, steadfastness, holding grief, a commitment towards the future and those we love, of never giving up. There it was, a feminine energy in all of its fierceness. By the time we were halfway around the circle, most of us were in tears. I certainly was. It felt like the beginning of something new, of bringing the heart into the quest to heal the wounds of the earth, of a feminine climate renaissance. And that is something that all of us here are part of, whether it's through the All We Can Save circles that are launching next week, or through your loving stewardship of land from your regenerative food, fashion, and other businesses. It's our time. The qualities we embody are the ones that are needed now. The compassion, the holding, the fierce love. As Ayanna Elizabeth says, well, the guys had their shot at it, didn't they? That hasn't gotten us to where we want to go. Let's talk about land. The way that climate change has been discussed has been all about winners and losers, charts and graphs, silver bullets, and who's right and who's wrong. We've been talking about addressing climate change as if we don't have to touch anything. And yet we know that climate is all about what happens on the ground before us. It's not something that's going to be fixed in a conference room or by dialing down greenhouse gas levels by remote control. Climate is regulated by the workings of healthy ecosystems. Climate regulation is happening in the North American prairie when vast numbers of buffalo move across the plains, building deep carbon-rich soils that support a tremendous range of life. Climate regulation is happening when reindeer, driven by Sami herders, sweep across the north of Norway, crushing the snowpack, which works as insulation so that the permafrost stays chill. Climate regulation is happening in the Mexican cloud forest, which stays moist and cool as the trees circulate moisture, thanks in part to a powerful woman some of us know named Patty Ruiz, who helps local villagers find livelihoods that don't involve chopping down large, beautiful trees. Stewarding our landscapes well is essential to a livable climate. In its most basic sense, the story of climate is the story of what happens to solar energy when it meets the ground. What determines the fate of solar energy, whether it is incorporated by life forms or becomes sensible heat, is the culmination of natural ecological cycles, the energy, carbon, mineral, and nutrient, energy, carbon, water, and nutrient cycles. And these cycles are driven by the activity and growth of animals and plants, essentially by life. There's an Australian farmer that I often quote. All right, he's a he, but even in this talk, we can have a token guy. His name is Peter Andrews, who says, plants manage water, and in managing water, they are managing heat. I love that. It's kind of a haiku. The point is that this rich biodiversity comprises the palette that you use when you are working on and with the land. When the land needs repair, then you work with that palette. Land is always in motion. So in terms of doing the best for the earth, it's not just a matter of all we can save, it's also all we can regenerate, because we need to and because we can. With that fierceness and our collaborative spirit and our capacity to transcend ego in service to the earth. My new book, The Reindeer Chronicles, is a global tour of regeneration, and I have a chapter on women in regenerative agriculture. I heard from women who work with young farmers and ranchers say that the women often bring to their work a more holistic perspective and a desire to work with nature. One woman whose work I greatly admire is Natalie Topa. I don't know if many of you know of her. She works for the Danish Refugee Council, which serves displaced populations around the globe. She is responsible for 10 countries in East Africa and Yemen. Now, imagine that, thinking about all what's going on in those countries, but that's her beat. It's really extraordinary what she does. She's always training women in refugee and internal displacement camps to set up gardens so they can save money on food and have funds that they can use to send their children to school. As she says, having a garden is like having a 3D printer for money. I bring up Natalie because she also has some sobering messages about women and the land. She points out the extent to which women and girls are vulnerable when there's land degradation. She offers an example of when there, like a situation when there's flooding in rural Uganda, which means that the people who bring supplies to all the villages have to take a longer route, which means they need more fuel, which means that they have to charge more for their goods. The woman's role is to put food on the table. And if she brings home less, she may be beaten by her husband. Natalie says land degradation often provokes crises of masculinity. If cattle die and the family can no longer pay school fees, a man's frustration and loss of pride can manifest in domestic violence. When there's a drought or other problem, the first one to get pulled out of school is the daughter. So as we celebrate the work of women on the farm and in the marketplace, of women policymakers and storytellers, we can stay mindful of the challenges that many of our sisters throughout the world still face. Climate, land, animals, livelihoods, family, well-being are all connected. And thriving is all about connection. So now back to where we started. The book, All We Can Save, takes its title from a poem by Adrienne Rich called Natural Resources. So it's a very brief poem and it goes like this. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. This is our lot, with no extraordinary power, except of course for our own, to reconstitute the world, to regenerate our landscapes and our communities and our spirits. As you can see, here they are, Ayanna and Elizabeth changed that line from all I cannot save to all we can save. Here they are. And now, with our speakers and with each other, let us explore all we can regenerate. Thank you.